everybody. Welcome to our second podcast of You Can Do This, all about living well with COPD and other chronic lung diseases. The name of our podcast today is Know Your Numbers, Pulmonary Function Testing. I'm Jane Martin, a respiratory therapist, educator, writer, and author. And I've spent much of the last 35 plus years listening to, learning from, and writing about people with COPD and other chronic lung diseases. Each week here on the podcast, we'll have a special guest, a person living with COPD or another chronic lung disease. And today, we're glad to have with us Barbara Giffen. We'll get with Barbara in a little while, but first, let's get started. Have you had your breathing tested? And if so, do you know your numbers? You should. Pulmonary function testing is a necessary part of diagnosing COPD. It's not the only thing that can help your doctor know for sure if you've got COPD or another chronic lung disease, but it's an important part of it. Think about it this way. Your doctor would not diagnose you with hypertension or high blood pressure without taking a blood pressure check, or wouldn't diagnose you with diabetes without ever looking at your blood glucose level. And just the same, if you have trouble breathing or if you're at risk for COPD, and we'll talk about risk factors a little bit later, it's recommended to have a pulmonary function test. And then once the results are in, you should know your numbers, just as people with diabetes, high cholesterol, and high blood pressure know theirs. There are two levels of pulmonary function testing: the complete pulmonary function and the pulmonary function screen or spirometry. A complete pulmonary function takes about an hour. It measures the flow, how the air moves through your bronchial airways, the volume, how much air your lungs hold, the resistance, how elastic or how stiff your lungs are, and diffusion, how well the oxygen moves from your blood, from your lungs into your bloodstream. A pulmonary function screen or spirometry determines only the flow and volume of air moving in and out of your lungs, and spirometry takes a half an hour or less. So those are the two levels, the pulmonary function complete. And sometimes when you have a pulmonary function complete, depending upon if you're in the office or what office or clinic you're in, you might take this test sitting in something kind of like a phone booth. And you can sit down, you can hear the person who's administering the test tell you to breathe all these different ways, and that's how you take the test. If you have a pulmonary function screen or a spirometry, you might sit in the phone booth, or you might just sit in a chair next to the machine with the mouthpiece in and a tube hooked to the machine. So there's a couple different ways to do it. One key indicator in COPD in the pulmonary function test results is a decrease in the FEV1. The FEV1 is the forced expiratory volume, how much air you blow out in the very first second of a long exhalation. Remember that when you have COPD, that's an obstructive lung disease. That's trouble getting the air out. So that FEV1 is an important factor in the results of the pulmonary function test. If you are wondering if you should have a pulmonary function test, here are some things to know. I'm going to read from my book, Live Your Life with COPD, 52 Weeks of Health, Happiness, and Hope, from this chapter. Talk with your doctor about having a spirometry test if you can answer yes to any of these questions. Do you have increased shortness of breath? Do you have frequent coughing with or without mucus, wheezing, tightness in your chest, a history of smoking, cigarettes, pipes, cigars, etc., a history of secondhand smoke, fumes, chemicals, or dust where you work, or smoke from home cooking or heating fuel? And finally, do you have a family history of other people in your family with COPD? So those are the risk factors. And if you have any of those things, you should be able to ask your doctor to order a pulmonary function test. Now let's talk a little bit about what we call, for the results, percent of normal predicted. You might hear somebody say, oh, I was at the doctor and he said, I've got half my lung function left. And sometimes people think that means that one lung is working perfectly and the other lung is not working at all, because that's half. But what this really means is percent of normal predicted. And when you go to the pulmonary function test, and before you take it, the technician or therapist asks you a series of questions. They ask you how old you are, how tall you are, if you're a man or a woman, and what ethnic race you are. And they put that information into the machine, and the machine knows how people with those characteristics, the same height, age, race, and gender that you are, those people with normal, healthy lungs, what they would do performing on the pulmonary function test. So then you take the pulmonary function test and you do several tries, you do the best you can, and they take your best number and then compare it to the numbers of somebody just like you, but with normal, healthy lungs. And that's how we arrive at what we call percent of normal predicted. So just say that the people with normal, healthy lungs can blow out 2 liters of air with a particular maneuver, and just say that you are only able to blow out 1 liter of air. So 1 is half of 2, so that's 50%. So that's how you would have 50% of normal predicted lung function. So that's how that works. So the values that you actually, the speed that you blow at and how much air you blow out, those numbers are important, but the ones we really pay attention to are those percents of normal predicted. Let's turn to our special guest patient, Barbara. And Barbara, can you tell us about your pulmonary function experience? Did you have spirometry? Did you have the complete hour-long test that you sit in the phone booth? Was it scary? You know, I've heard people say, are you kidding me? I can hardly breathe at all. And you're going to have me go in and test my breathing? I don't think I can do that. But keep in mind that the respiratory therapist or the technician, they're very good at giving you time to take a break and coaching you through things. And I think we'll hear that from Barbara too. So Barbara, I'm going to be quiet now and ask you about your pulmonary function experience.
I've probably had more pulmonary function tests than most people. I'm sure I've had at least 10, and it's probably more. And one thing I can say is, with all of the tests that I've had, the technicians are awesome. They go over everything before they start, and then they don't leave you hanging. Then at each step, they say, okay, now this is the step that this is going to happen. Now, okay, the next one, now this is going to happen. So you may be in there for a while, but I mean, I've never had any technicians be like huffy or put off, like you're wasting my time or anything like that. They're always very nice. They go through everything slowly. They tell you why they're going to do it, what it's going to do.
Can you tell us a little bit about the doctor going over the results with you? without telling us anything that it's none of our business to know, can you tell us, what they said about your lung function? Was any of it kind of scary to hear or shocking to hear, or something that you didn't know what to do with?
Pretty much when your breathing is not as good as it was before. So it's really not shocking or anything. For the most part. I mean, I was in the lung transplant evaluation clinic at Gainesville for several years. So that each time they would do the test, it'd be a little worse, a little worse. Maybe it didn't change too much, but it was going downhill. Last year I had a lung volume reduction. So yay, my numbers got better.
Uh-huh. We have kind of an extra bonus. It's what I call an added insight. And this is how to ask for spirometry if your doctor isn't ordering it. What's the best way to go about asking for spirometry without insulting your doctor? And we asked this question of a wonderful respiratory therapist, a friend of mine, Helen Sorensen, and she goes into suggestions on how to approach your doctor if you know that there's something wrong with your breathing and your doctor's not too excited about ordering pulmonary function test. So that's an extra added bonus. Remember, at the end of each chapter, there's a portion called Your Turn, and that's when you can get involved and act upon what you learned in that chapter, think about key questions and so on. And one part of it is remember the key points. If you have trouble breathing, you should have your lung function tested. Number 2, if you have been diagnosed with COPD, you should know your FEV1 number and what that means for you. Remember, being diagnosed with COPD is not a death sentence, and you're not alone. You can do this. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you here again next week. Bye-bye.